Excuse me, I'll have to take my earbuds out. But welcome back to Journey Through Alkebulan. So I keep hearing, wherever I go, whether I'm taking my truck to be serviced or I'm out and about at the store, and let's say a conversation happens to strike up amongst me and my sisters and brothers, and I tell them where we're journeying to, and I keep hearing, they know that I'm a mother and I am yet to be married, and I keep hearing, you're going to be married. So when you get there, you're going to be married. Your husband is there. Your husband is there. I appreciate that so much. I mean, I find it to be very, very cute and very encouraging. But I've also been asked so many times, why am I still single? So I decided to really just answer that question directly. Okay, so I have a son and he's 14. And I was I don't want to say a late bloomer, but I was considered to be like a late bloomer because I was born and reared up in the nation's capital, Chocolate City. I am a DC girl, from the streets of DC, and there's a very unique culture here. We have our own music. We have go-go that was born here, and we march to the beat of our own drum here in DC, the nation's capital. And I was privileged to have been reared here when it was actually Chocolate City. It was predominantly us, and it was beautiful. And yes, we had we had violence. There was violence, but we all know the underlying factor of that, or the underlying reason for that, and that I'm not going to go into. But even even amongst the violence, there was love. There was love. There was a lot of love. And of course that wasn't televised. We know why. But there was a lot of love. There was a lot of oneness and laughter. DC is very small. They say that there's only like a 4 degree of separation, meaning, by the time you've met the fourth person, you have met someone who or who you are related to. So it's just a very close-knit community. But I also grew up in a time where teenage pregnancy was an epidemic. The high school that I attended a few high schools, but the first high school that I attended, it had a daycare in the school, which is great because it was encouraging, the young sisters who were mothers to continue their education and get their high school diploma. But it was all around me. I come from a family where my 2 older sisters were all teenage mothers. So I broke the pathology of teenage parenthood in my family. I, held myself. I still had my flowers, if you will. It was very important to me to do that, to hold myself and my purity until I got married. And that is what I would journal about. That is what, I would put in my diary, is that I was just waiting on, my husband, so that, we could have this wonderful, beautiful life, and live happily ever after, if you will. So I was the odd girl out. A lot of the times, because I was like a severe introvert, like I am still an introvert. It's shocking that I'm now able to be on this platform and be so open because I've come a long way, and I think I've stated in other videos that my son has been a big help to bringing me out of my shell just a bit. But I'm an introvert by nature. I will always be. I accept that, and it is a blessing. I love having some me time and time to self-reflect and time for introspection, and solitude. I love those moments. And so being an introvert is just my nature. However, back then, it caused a lot of problems for me in social circles, where people saw me as anti-social. They labeled me as being stuck up, and especially excuse me, because of the way that I speak. I was criticized, and oftentimes I was told that I speak like a white person. And I thought that was such an ignorant statement, because they don't set the standard for me. I'm a lover of language, period. And I am so looking forward to learning and being fluent in many African languages. That is something that I am currently pursuing, and I will also put my all into making sure that I am enunciating and pronouncing the words as they should be pronounced, and speaking the language as it should be spoken. I am just a lover of language. So they don't set the standard for me. So with that being said, I was told that, I speak white, and that, I am stuck up, blah, 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 blah. So I endured a lot. Also, and I'm just giving you guys like a kind of a synopsis of, what has led to me being single at this moment in my life. Just so you can kind of understand me a bit more. And I was also teased a lot, especially in elementary school. We were put in a private Catholic school. And so I was teased a lot because I was a brown skinned girl. I was a chocolate drop. And I was so I was apparently just too dark. And, I was teased a lot. But it never broke me. It didn't break me because I had a father who always told me how very beautiful I was. And he also told me that they were just jealous, and that they wished that they had been blessed with this melanin, this much melanin, and they wish that they were chocolate, and they actually know that I am beautiful, but because of pride, that they don't want to admit it and say that I am actually beautiful, and instead they are trying to make me feel bad about my my gift. So as my dad, called it. And so he would always tell me, he said, you're the most beautiful girl I know. He said, aside from your mother. So, and I'm sure he said the same about, my sisters, but growing up, they would call me Mink, because they said that my skin looked like a mink coat, a black mink coat. And so my dad, he would always just instill in me how beautiful I was. And so when I looked in the mirror, of course I saw beauty. It didn't matter, what they said, and they could never break my spirit. That all changed when I got into junior high school. And I don't know what happened between that transition from elementary school to junior high school, and I honestly was not ready for it. When I got into junior high school, it was like all these guys, the brothers were just like liking me, complimenting me, and I didn't know how to handle that because that was not my previous experience in elementary school. all of a sudden a skin that was demonized and deemed ugly was now being embraced and upheld as, you know, this standard of beauty. And I was very much so surprised. I didn't know how to handle it, but it was very welcoming as well. So yeah, I had at that time, you know, just little. I had my first love in junior high school, and or you know what I deemed as love at that tender age in my life, and we happened to have the exact same birthday except for the year. So that was special. But you know, I was with him, and I tell you, you couldn't have told me that I would not marry him. I mean, we were just inseparable. And, you know, he was my love, and I was his love. Staying up all night on the phone, you guys know, you hang up, no, you hang up, no, you hang up, and it goes until someone falls asleep on the phone. So, you know, I had some really special relationships, from my first love to my high school sweetheart, and just going into my adult years. I would say after high school, I was always just attracted to men who were older than me, and not so much, you know, I would say, well, yeah, probably a bit, about 7 years. So when I was like 18, it just so happened that way. Things that I was, you know, wanting to talk about and discuss, I couldn't discuss amongst the boys my age. And so it just kind of happened that way, where I would meet men who were older than me, and you know, had a very special relationship with a man once I graduated high school and was going into college. And I honestly, again, thought, okay, this is it. He, other than my dad, taught me what a man looked like, you know, and a man whom I'm in a relationship with. He was a man. He was a king. He protected me. I never, ever, ever felt unsafe when I was with him, ever. And it brought me so much comfort. He was a responsible man. He had a house. He owned his own house. He owned his own. He took care of his business. He didn't have any children, and he was 8 years my senior. So I respected that as well. I, being younger, you know, and I wanted to explore, you know, and he hadn't explored. And so I wanted to go away to college, and he didn't want me to go away to college, but he didn't prohibit me. But he made me to understand that it would probably adversely affect our relationship. And so I decided to go my way, and eventually it did affect our relationship. I was, you know, a freshman in college, and, you know, having a good time and those experiences, and, you know, he was back where he was. And so, you know, that ended. And, you know, one thing I would always say to myself is, and I still have my flowers, again, at this juncture. So I hadn't given myself away. And so even throughout that relationship, never gave myself away. Was just waiting on my husband. And I always held marriage to be so sacred, you know, yeah, just so sacred and beautiful, very spiritual. a balance between the two, you know, the masculine and the feminine, and us having both of those in us, but one being prominent in the other, and us just the perfect balance between the two. So I held it to be just so sacred, and I wanted to experience that, and that man was the only man that in my mind that I wanted to procreate with. And so that's why I held myself for so long, and it was a shock to those around me, because they were like, oh, you're not having sex, and you know, or what, how is he doing X, Y, and Z for you, and you're not giving up anything? You know, that was like the mentality. Like I had to give up something for a man to give to me. Like I had to give up my virginity for a man to give to me. I didn't know that kind of relationship. I only knew that the relationship where I gave my heart, and the man in turn gave his heart and showed his love for me in various ways. And they were able to see my heart. And we didn't have, you know, sex to cloud our judgment about whether we really truly loved one another, and whatever I defined love as at that time. But yes, I was able to experience real intimacy without sex, and I am so blessed. I feel so very blessed to have had those experiences, and not to have been pressured, you know, to have been with you know, my from my first love onto my first real adult relationship, to have men who understood and respected me. So that was the blessing. So that, you know, I held marriages to be very sacred, and I just, you know, I was waiting for it. And I always would say, you know, because I came from a broken home, you know, where my parents were divorced. You know, my mother had, you know, divorced my dad, and you know, I saw that and I said, I don't want that. Like that would hurt me so bad. Like if I had a child with, you know, my husband, and then we weren't together, you know, you know, that's what I said to myself. So fast forward to my mid-20s, and I met a man, and you know, we talked, and he made me laugh, but he came to me at a very vulnerable time in my life, and I accept the fact that I ignored the signs. I ignored the signs because I was getting older, and I really wanted to be married. So I was willing to make it work, you know, by any means necessary. And so I ignored a lot of the signs, and I paid for that. And so, you know, we continued our relationship, and eventually, prior to us being married, I became pregnant. And I'll have to tell you guys about my pregnancy story. Well, you know, I'll just share it now. So so I was in the military for a short period of time, and I was released early because I had surgery, and it was discovered during that surgery that I had a issue with my that I had endometriosis. And so you know, the surgeon told me, oh, you're not gonna be able to have children. And I remember that it was like somebody stopped me really quick, but then it's like that pain just dissipated immediately, like right after they stopped me. And then I just totally, it's like it went in and then exited. So I didn't carry it with me ever. And so I went on about my life. You know, I never believed it. I never ever believed it. And I always knew that I wanted to be a mother. That was another thing that I held to be extremely sacred and such a wonderful privilege. And so I didn't believe that surgeon. So fast forward to me learning that I was pregnant. You know, it wasn't even time for my cycle to come. It wasn't even time. And I heard a voice. I heard a voice, and it was crystal clear. And I was driving, and it said, "You're with child." And I was like, what in the world is going on here? And so I ignored the voice because I'm like, what is this? Who is this? And why am I hearing this? And I ignored it. And as the weeks, you know, another week went by, and I heard again, "You're with child." And I'm like, uh-oh, I'm hearing this voice again, you know. And so a couple of days went by, and I was driving, and just before, and I was actually coming up on a CVS pharmacy, and so I heard the voice again, and it said, "You are with child." And I'm like, oh my goodness, that's it. I whipped my car into the CVS. I was like, that's it. I gotta prove, like, I don't know what this voice is, but I've got to see if what this voice is saying is truth. So I whipped my car into the CVS, and I asked the young lady, I said, listen, I said it very discreetly, I said, hey, can you come and help me? And so I pulled her to the side, and I said, I need a pregnancy test. Can you help me? She said, yes. She said, oh, this is so exciting, you know. And so she helped me. I took the test. Now, I read the directions on the test, and the test said that, you know, of course you pee on the stick, and then I had to wait, I think it's like 10 minutes or so. So I did that. So I tinkled on the stick, and I happened to, as I was trying to set the stick down, saw the lines, and I'm like, but this thing is saying that I am, but I just tinkled on the stick. Okay, you guys, I was so, even then, still so green. Like, so I'm thinking like it's a defective test, because like I had just tinkled on the stick. How could it possibly have rendered any results, right? And I laugh about this because it's hilarious. And so I was like, okay, that's it. I'm gonna wait. It was 2 in a box. So I was like, I'm gonna wait. So I waited until my bladder filled up again, and I tinkled on the stick again. And it did the same thing again, immediately. So I was like, okay, that's it. So I called my really good girlfriend at the time, and I told her what was going on, and she was just going ballistic. Finally, oh my goodness, you're gonna be a mom. And I'm like, no, I'm trying to tell you that the test is defective. Like, did you not hear me? That as soon as I tinkled, like the results came. And so she's cracking up, and she's like, Mahogany, you're pregnant. I said, no, I'm gonna go to the emergency room. So she was like, okay, go to the emergency room, call me, and let me know what they say. So I went to the emergency room, and I told the doctor, you know, the doctor's like, why are you here, blah, 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 blah. So I tell him, and he's like, okay, well, did you take pregnancy tests? I said, yes. I said, I took 2. He said, and he's like so perplexed, like the look on his face, he's like, okay, so you took 2 tests, and they were positive, and then now you're here in the emergency room because, and I'm like, to see if I'm really pregnant. So I told him the whole story about how when I tinkled on the stick and it said, and so he's cracking up, okay? So apparently I look like a big jackass to everybody. So, and the joke was on me. And so he was like, okay, so I'm gonna tell you this. He said, the test that we give here, okay, we're gonna give you another test. And if it comes out positive, you are pregnant. Don't take any more tests. Don't go to any more emergency rooms. So I'm like, okay. So he did it. I took the test, and so I am waiting for the results, and I am just like a bit anxious, and I'm just like, oh, I need these results to come. Okay, am I? Oh my goodness, what am I going to do if I am? Oh, and just all of these emotions, And so finally, it was taking a long time, and so this guy came and he just sat by me, and we started to converse. And I had told him what I was waiting on, and he said, "Oh, I happen to work in the lab." I said, well, I've been waiting for quite some time. And I said, I really just want to know so that I can get back, home, as I have to work in the morning. And he said, okay, I'm going to go down and I'm going to check on it for you. I'll let you know. So by the time he went down to check on it for me, the nurse was calling my name. And she said, she did like this and opened her arms. And I hugged her, and she was so warm. And she said in my ear, congratulations, Mom. And I was like, really? And she was like, you're going to be a mother. And I said, oh my goodness, you guys, like, I'm reliving it right now. Like, that feeling is something that I carry with me, and I will always carry with me for the rest of my existence. It was the happiest day of my life thus far. I was overjoyed, and instantly I was in love with this child in my womb, and instantly I knew that I would do whatever it took to make sure that he or she had the best life possible, that I was the best mother that I could possibly ever be. And I cried tears of pure joy. And I called my girlfriend and I told her, and she's screaming and she's crying, and she was like, finally, like, look at you, you're gonna be a mom. And I remember, so I was pregnant. I told the father of my child at the time that I was pregnant, and it wasn't really the response that I expected, as he had no children either. And so we went on, with our relationship, and then some things became very apparent. The signs it was like, first it was like little pebbles were being thrown at me. And then the pebbles became rocks, and then the rocks became bricks, and then the bricks became boulders, to the point where I just could not ignore.